My name is Tetsu Young from Ask Tetsu, and we've been taking a little break, and we're coming back with a little bit of a hectic thing here going on, but let's go.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to our session at Raising Multilinguals Live. My name is Margaret Robertson from Ute's International Lounge.
Welcome back to our Raising Multilinguals broadcast. So excited to be back here. I am Rita Rosenbach from multilingualparenting.com, and today we will have a really interesting session, a really important session, which is very close to my heart. We are speaking about being a grandparent in a multilingual family. And may I introduce our first of our one or three grandmothers in this session, because I'm also one. Marlies Ottimo-Fiore. Welcome to today's session. Please do tell us a little bit about yourself and what languages you have in your family.
Thank you. My name is Marlies Ottimo-Fiore. I'm German, but my last name is Italian since my husband is Italian. I have worked for more than 30 years for an Italian Institute of Culture, and I've organized lots of concerts, theater, meetings with authors, and so on, cultural events. Now I'm retired, nearly 4 years, and I try to help children to learn reading, because there are many children who have difficulties. That's a honorary job, and apart from that, I try to enjoy my time to do lots of things I couldn't do when I was still working. I have only one son, Martino, who grew up bilingually, German, Italian.
Yes. And how many grandchildren have you got?
3. The eldest is Mina. She is 9 years old. The second is Mikhail. We call him Mickey. He's 6 years old. And the little one is Miro, who was born a year ago in Portugal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marlies.
Great, and I have the pleasure and the honor also to introduce briefly our second grandmother in the team today. She's Frances Doric Stein. She's British. She grew up in Barbados and studied speech and language therapy in Scotland. She worked with multi-handicapped children and moved to the Netherlands with her Dutch husband. Frances raised 3 bilingual children who are all adults now. Worked in international schools until the start of the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is a special education school, which is the only international special school in the Netherlands, actually in The Hague, where she was also the team leader. She has also lived in the US and India before returning to the Netherlands a few years ago. But please correct me if I'm wrong, your children didn't track around the world with you, if I understand right?
No, they had already left school, yes.
Yes. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your grandchildren or your grandchild or children to be, and your children, how old they are and where they are living and what the languages they are speaking, or yourself as well.
Okay. I have just one grandchild so far. She's only 16 months old, Bella. But there's another one on the way, a little boy on the way in December. All of my children range in age from 31 to 36. And they were all raised here in Holland, bilingually with Dutch and English. Some of them speak a bit of other languages as well, because they were schooled in Holland, and Holland is pretty efficient at teaching languages. My daughter, who's the mother of Bella, is married to a Dutch partner, and they speak Dutch and English at home. And Bella's grandmother is Dutch and speaks Dutch with her. My son, who's expecting a baby boy, his partner is Dutch, but grew up in the United States. And so they tend to speak English mostly between themselves because she grew up speaking. She actually was born in the Dutch West Indies, speaking, Dutch, English, and Papiamento. But she is most comfortable in English because she grew up in the United States. So it's mainly Dutch and English with us. Yes.
Okay. And Marlies?
Yes.
What about the languages that your grandchildren speak with you or with your husband?
Well, as I said, my husband is Italian, but since we see our grandchildren only at most twice a year for a few weeks, we decided that it would be useless to try to teach them Italian. So we both speak only German with our grandchildren. My daughter-in-law is from Pakistan, and her first language is English, and her mother language should be Urdu, and she speaks Urdu, but also English with her children. Our son told us when the first child was born that he had to decide, because they do OPOL like we did, one person, one language, and he decided for German because German naturally is his first language. He grew up in Germany, even though he has always spoken Italian with his father. But growing up in Germany, German school, German friends, and so on, naturally, German was his first language. And then in our family, there are many other languages. There is my sister-in-law, which my husband's brother's wife, which is Spanish, and her children, who are adults now, both went to the French school, and in our family we speak German, Italian, French, Spanish, Urdu, and since all their children too, one lives in my niece, she lives in Greece now, and before that she lived for 5 years in Portugal, and one nephew lives in the Netherlands, and another nephew lives in Sweden. So we have occupied the whole of Europe.
Yeah, you are like a United Nations family somehow.
Yes. I like that very much.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Impressive.
Yes.
Yes, I should mention mine. I have a 2 and a 5-year-old grandson. They both will say, I'm 3, I'm soon 3, I'm soon 6, because that's always important. I speak Swedish with them, always Swedish. They know that when they come to mormor, which is grandma in Swedish, it is only Swedish, and they go to an English speaking nursery or school, so English is the strongest language, but it turns after a while when they know that they will always get Swedish from mormor, so they're used to that. They also hear Punjabi from their grandpa and from other grandparents as well, so that's another language.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah.
No, I was going to say, while we're sharing grandchildren, although I don't have any yet, we do have a little comment from Margaret. Margaret Robertson tells us that she has 4 grandchildren, 9, 6, 1, and a 6-month-old growing up in Scotland. So that's right around the corner with you.
Oh, Rita. Yes, my new home country. Yes.
Well, there you go. But they speak English, French, and Arabic. So
wonderful.
that's quite, in terms of language distance, that's quite far away from English and French, just like Urdu was for Marlies. So
yes, Urdu is. I think it's a very difficult language. I don't understand a word of it, but I find it very interesting, very fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, the difficulty of language is always relative, depending on what you already know. So
Yes.
all languages are as easy. For small children growing up, they can learn any language as easily. It's us adults that are struggling.
Yes,
well.
that's what I always say, you know. And you can learn this language. Even very, very small children can learn it.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yes, great. Maybe I can continue with you, Rita, with the next question. Let me just take it. What is your role as grandparent in raising your grandchildren with multiple languages?
Well, apart from the biggest thing being the grandmother, who mostly says yes, but sometimes no if mom says no. I try to be, because my daughter is the only person speaking Swedish to her sons on a daily basis. So I try to be this as strong a support for her as possible, which means I do stay consistent in speaking Swedish with them, to the extent that now when my other daughter, who doesn't have children yet, but they have a dog, I also speak Swedish to the dog, just to make sure that I'm consistent.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
Grand dog. The
and
grand
the
dog.
Yeah, dog completely understands what I say. We get along swimmingly. And it's we live a little bit nearer, so we can meet more often. So hopefully we can meet at least once a month. But we also stay in touch every week through online calls. So especially now during this 1.5 last years, what we've been through, and we haven't been able to meet. I got more and more used to speaking with them online, and I've found out the ways how I can keep them occupied, because that's the challenge with small children. They will only stay as long as it's interesting, and then they just walk off and leave you there if it's not interesting enough. So that's kind of been my role, and sometimes been reading the bedtime stories sometimes online, and just trying to keep them occupied if mom needed to do something else. So I've been remotely babysitting on occasion as well.
Yes, absolutely. And Francis, what about you?
Well, I'm very lucky that I live very near to my daughter and my granddaughter. And we decided that we were going to be a bubble with her family and us through her babyhood. So I see her really once a week at least, sometimes more often. During the lockdown, the second lockdown, when the daycare was closed and she was in daycare, should have been in daycare, I actually helped out a bit more because they couldn't get any work done otherwise. So I saw her a lot. And I don't think I ever really articulated what my role was going to be, except as Rita said, be a grandmother. But in the back of my mind, it was always that I would speak English with my grandchildren, because it's in their interest. Everyone who grows up in Holland grows up exposed to a lot of English, but there is a big difference between learning English at school and speaking it as a native. And I wanted my children and my grandchildren to be comfortable speaking with other English speakers with my family. My mother, for instance, who is her great-grandmother, she speaks to her online from time to time. So I just speak in English with Bella. My daughter speaks English with her most of the time, but when she's alone with her husband, of course, they speak Dutch. And she speaks Dutch at daycare, and she speaks Dutch with her Dutch granny. And I'm not in the slightest bit worried that she won't learn one or the other of the languages. It's really about the quality of the language for me.
Yes, and I find it very, very nice that you have the opportunity to have even a great grandmother who can pass on the language. I mean, we were talking about grandparents, and I didn't really think about great grandparents, but you have this situation as well, which is amazing. Yes.
Yes. My mother is trying very hard to teach Bella how to blow a kiss, but she hasn't quite got the hang of that yet. She'll get there.
She'll get there, exactly.
Yes.
No, but it's amazing to see also whatever age and wherever you are. Yeah, nowadays, I mean, online, you can be online.
Yes.
Depending maybe on the age of the child, if they can understand already what is going on the other side of the screen and the attention span of both somehow. But it's great that you can actually create this kind of a bond of a relationship with her, her and her great grandmother and yourself.
Yes.
Amazing, thank you. And Marlies.
Yes.
Tell us more about, was your role as grandmother part of the fact to being a grandmother naturally when these children are born, with regards to their multilingual upbringing? Was this something that you discussed with your son and your daughter-in-law, with Mariam?
We did. I must say that we didn't speak very much about it because it was obvious and clear to all of us that we would naturally speak German with them. You know, we also talk online to our grandchildren, and the eldest one, who is 9 years old, she sometimes tells me interminable stories online. The 6-year-old one is not so interested. He was only very happy when I sent him a train, an electric train. He was very glad about that. But last year, when our third grandchild was born, the situation was very complicated because my son and his family moved from Ghana, Accra, Ghana, to Portugal, and the children, both children, the 9 and 6-year-old, they stayed for a whole month with us. And I must say, it was fantastic because the children did not ask when their parents would come. That made me happy. But apart from that, they naturally spoke German. And then something very interesting happened. Mina, the oldest, she wanted to learn Italian. And she asked my husband continually, how is that called in Italian? And she wrote down all the words, and then she tried to speak Italian with my husband, who was happy and also unhappy because he was so sad about the fact that he hadn't the opportunity to talk with her very often, to really teach her the language. And so very sorry about that, but I don't think that it would work at this distance. If you see the children only now, they have been here for a week, and we hope to go there next year for 3 weeks, maybe but it's too short a time to teach a language, we believe.
But you have, what I find wonderful about that situation is that she's interested, and that there are other ways she can start learning Italian at some point when she grows up, and you can be there to support her at that point. So I understand that it feels a bit sad that you haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but I still think that you have instilled the love of the language in her clearly, because she's already wanting to add that to the other languages she speaks. So I think look at it as a positive and an opportunity later on.
Yes, somehow. And I mean, we always picture, maybe when we think about transmitting a language, that the outcome needs to be fantastic, perfect, whatever perfection is, but it's never perfect in the end. So whatever she takes on, and even if it's I don't know, the vocabulary about a topic that she likes, it's what she takes in that will be nurtured later on in some way. But I would surely not stop it if she's still interested. So
I think it would be very a very good idea, because our grandchildren have naturally German and Italian citizenship, and a Pakistani origin card, but they are citizens of Italy, so it would be very useful if they spoke the language.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, this was actually also something that my grandparent, dad from my mother's part always told me, because I was quite reluctant in speaking German growing up in Italy, and he always said, you know, you have the German citizenship and maybe one day you will live here, so you can be proud of this. And he transmitted the language and the pride and everything. So far, I never managed to live in Germany, but still, this kind of message that he got through to me, and I still remember him saying this with this gaze and like challenging me. Okay, now let me hear, let me see, let me read your letters or whatever, because at that time it were letters. Maybe we can go over to the next question that we have to you, Marlies. You were talking about your grandchildren were with you, or at least the eldest one, last year for a month, and for the rest, you don't see them that often. But can you share what kind of activities you do or you did with your grandchildren to foster the target language? I can imagine in a month you can find a lot of opportunities to also find out what they are interested in. But would you like to share with us?
Yes, naturally, we did things that each grandparent does with their grandchildren. We went swimming, we had ice cream, we did lots of things. We always, each night, I used to read a book, something to the children in German, naturally. And the interesting thing is they wanted to watch a film, Ice Age. I think you know that. And yes, and one part of it, I don't, the third or fourth part, and they wanted to watch it in German. I found that very interesting, because you know how children are. They watch this film and then they want to watch it again the next day and the day after that and again. And I said, okay, you can watch it 3 times. And the second time, when I put the CD or the DVD in, it was in English, and Mina immediately said, no, that's not okay, that's English, we want it in German. And I found that heartwarming. I was so happy about it. She wanted it in German, and so they watched it in German, and that's what we did. But first of all, most of all, we were reading, and then we visited, or we invited very often our how is it called in English? Goddaughter, our goddaughter, who has 2 daughters of her own, more or less the same age, and they play together very often, and naturally they spoke in German. And I think that's a very good thing. If children joke, if they play together, I think they don't even realize that they have to think about the language. I observed them and I found it very impressive, the way they talk to each other, the way the language was there, but it wasn't a big issue.
Yeah, perfect. That's fantastic. Yes. And what about you, Frances? What?
Well, you know, I talk to children for my living, and it comes very naturally to me. I don't particularly do anything different than with my own small children when they were tiny. I do a lot of gesture, a lot of finger rhymes. I taught Bella how to clap hands. She clapped hands early, and she did it with me. My daughter is a generous soul and has forgiven me, but she did it first with me. So I was very proud of that. We read a lot. Bella was very highly baby literate, in the sense that, you know, you if you read picture books with your baby, and you start to realize that they are more often turning the pages in the right way, that they understand that when they turn the page, they're going to see something new. So their level of excitement arises. She very early started to distinguish between talk language and onomatopoeic language. So if I was holding her on my lap and we had the book in front and I said an animal noise, she would turn and look at me and smile because she knew that the animal noise was slightly different to regular speech. So all of that has been an easy way to teach her a lot of words. And she has a good vocabulary. She's got upward of 50 words. She's 16 months. But for grandparents, I think that there's less pressure to teach, and there's a lot more attention and time, quality time, because by virtue of the fact that you don't have to bring this child up, you might be helping them out, you might be doing things for them and so on, but you are not responsible for bringing this child up. So you have no axe to grind. I don't need to teach her the color red. I am very confident that she will learn the color red one day. I just spend time with her and give her endless attention and play endless games and sing songs and do rhymes and finger games. And then, of course, in the back of my mind, there's a very important speech and language goal. That's my professional hat for a minute, that you want them to have about 16 gestures by 16 months. So teaching them to high five and clap hands and to wave bye-bye, to shake their head for no and nod for yes, all those things. Pointing, of course, very important. Those are all things that you stimulate just by being with them and playing with them, pointing out toys.
Yeah, that's a very important message that you're giving there. I mean, you're a professional, and I wanted to ask you also, is there a difference between how you raise your own children bilingually and your grandchildren? And you just answered that you have more time and there is a less burden to bringing them up, right? Because that's the burden for the parents. But I think the message also that is very important when we raise children generally with multiple languages, that gestures are also very important, and that they are the first ways, not only the first ways, but some of the first ways that they can actually transmit some kind of messages, maybe if they cannot articulate the words yet, right? So I remember one grandparent I talked with many years ago, and she said she put down the hand of the children because she wanted them to speak. And I remember that everything in my body was no, please let her move around and gesticulate. But she was gesticulating very much, but she was very expressive. And that helped her. So I very applaud you and thank you very much for bringing this up. I saw Tetsu also nodding. I think his mother is also there to help with transmitting languages.
Correct.
So I imagine you can.
No, I found it very interesting that you say parents have an extra burden, whereas grandparents don't have. but you having gone through both, and as Uta asked, that means that when you were raising your own daughter, you felt a bigger urge to teach them the colors, the numbers, and
all those things. Yes.
Do you find that it is more effective now, where you don't have that pressure?
Well, the thing is that really most of my time with Bella is spent playing or being in the garden and showing her things. So all of the language is about what's happening. And of course mothers do that when they're dressing their children and bathing them and putting them to bed and feeding them and all of those things. So they talk through all the daily routines. But I have belonged to the Club of Mothers, and I know that when mothers sit down with books with their children, they question and they say, "What's that? And what color is that?" Which is completely unnecessary, because the child knows that you know what it is. Really, you know. But it's mothers.
But we still do it.
Parents like to check that their children know these things.
Yes.
And they like them to demonstrate that they know these things. Whereas when you're a grandmother, you know, I know that they're going to do
my
all
ears
that.
are hurting.
I hear it too somehow. Yes, but
Yes.
I think maybe the way that you're putting it is, it's actually the parents have the task to transmit the languages, and the grandparents can
We
enjoy.
have the pleasure.
You have the pleasure, exactly.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is actually a good message to all grandparents. Please take this chance. Don't miss this chance. I must say, my parents couldn't help us raise our children this way. They were far away. They didn't know exactly how to do, but it surely is a good way to start it. And I would like to ask Rita, because I know that Rita has different ways how she motivates her grandchildren to speak, or to engage in conversations and activities with her.
Yes, I wanted to pick up on the phrase of how did you plan them. That is kind of not something I do. I tried because I thought it would work, but it doesn't. I follow their lead. Absolutely follow their lead, because then I know that they will go with the flow, and we can have some fun. And it is not that one thing always works. Sometimes like playing with the Legos works if they're in that mood. And then what we do is kind of this would be my elder grandson. He plays with the Lego, and I comment and I ask question, ask him, are you going to build that, and how are you going to do that? And we have a discussion about the thing that he's doing, which then becomes a natural discussion. I can bring in a lot of new words and interesting words, and then I can ask him, did you know what that means? And then he will tell me yes or no, and then we would speak about that word. But it's kind of, it's natural, because that's belongs to what he's doing. So my advice is always go with it, see what your grandchild is interested in. Sometimes it can mean I've been playing hide and seek, and I've been behind sofas, and that's quite exciting actually. You get to see places that you never normally see when they carry the phone with them. So but that is kind of and that is part of what you said, Francis, that is parents may want to have certain goals, and they want to do this, and that needs to be achieved. We can go with the flow and let the children lead us, the grandchildren lead us, and because there is so many things we can do with what they're interested in. I mean,
also because we have the undivided attention.
Absolutely, yes. And to me, I always say, I mean, if nothing else helps, then these figures do grab especially their little ones' attention.
What I always advise grandparents who are far away from children and only have these online conversations is to see if you can build in a little ritual that you always do with them, a little rhyme that you say, or a song that you sing when you greet them, or when you say goodbye to them, or some kind of a little thing that you can hold on to that is special between you and your grandchildren. I think that's a really nice thing to do as well. That's what my mother does, the great grandmother. That's what she quite naturally does with Bella, and I see that Bella waits for that and sees that and expects it and loves it. So that's really nice.
That is indeed. Yeah.
Talking about gesticulating, I remembered something. As Ute will doubtlessly know, Italians are very gesticulating people. And my husband taught different jests, typical jests, to the children. And I must say, I never really realized that because I'm used to it. We speak more Italian at home, my husband and I, than German. You know, Ute, maybe you know this.
Yeah. See.
So that means if you eat something that's good, you like
buono,
it.
Buono, buono. Buono, buono.
Yes. And other gestures. And the children, the both elder ones, they love these gestures. And then my husband also spoke Italian with the little one because the little boy doesn't distinguish yet. He's a year old now between German, English, or German, or Italian, whatever. And he taught, or he sang some songs. Oh my God! I prefer to speak Italian.
Yes, I can.
Excuse me. Songs for children, and I think that comes naturally. I remember that our son, before his first child was born, had some doubts. He said, well, since he always speaks English with his wife, he said, well, I don't know whether I guess it will be difficult for me to speak German with a child. But afterwards, he told me, you know, it wasn't difficult at all. It came naturally. It came naturally to speak German with her. And he is very consistent, and I'm very happy about that. I have read, when our son was born 41 years ago, growing children up bilingually, at least in Germany, wasn't considered a good idea. They told us it will only confuse the child, it won't speak well, neither of the languages, and all these stupid things. The only one who gave us very much hope was the pediatra. Ute?
Yeah, the
pediatrician.
Pediatrician. Okay. And because he was Turkish, and his own two daughters had grown up bilingually. So that was a big help for us, because all the rest of the people around us told us that we were ruining the child.
Well, my daughter told me that last week the psychological liaison for the daycare visited, and she told the ladies in charge of the group that she was very impressed with Bella's language development, and that it was really very advanced. I don't think it's that advanced, but she thought it was very advanced. And she said, and it's so amazing that she's bilingual also. And I thought, well, maybe that's why she's advanced.
Did you tell her that, or did you just think it was?
I just thought it myself, and my daughter feels the same. You know, she said, yes, you know, she speaks two languages. We know that there are different words, because of course at daycare there's a different vocabulary than at home. Some of the words overlap, but not all of the words overlap. And my daughter speaks English with her, but when she's with her husband, they speak Dutch. So sometimes she also speaks Dutch with her, and it's not particularly difficult. It comes quite naturally. And I don't believe in language confusion.
No,
it doesn't exist. It's a myth.
No,
well,
it's a myth.
It's a myth. It's a myth.
It's one of the many myths. Yes.
Yes.
I've at one time I collected them and I came up with 26, but I'm still counting. I have another list that's much longer, and it's incredible. But many of these myths are debunked now, so there is hope.
Yes.
I think we had another question. I just share it on the screen, but I think we can almost skip it, because do you find that speaking your language with your grandchildren brings you closer to them, or do you feel a heightened language barrier? As far as I understood now, I think of everyone here on the screen today, and maybe also those who are following us, it brings us closer.
Yes.
Yeah, no matter if
Yes.
it's through a screen or if it is in person. And
Yes.
I think, though, that the reason why we ask this is because the children who grow up with multiple languages, they also have this transition between one language and the other. And sometimes maybe the older one more than the younger ones, but it depends also on the character and the specific situation. They have a harder time to switch to the language of the grandparents or of the other parent who maybe is not around that often, etc. So it was a bit related with that as well. Would you say that there are some kind of transition moments that makes it a bit more difficult for your grandchild to switch to English, or is it just a very natural kind of thing? She sees you and
yeah, I don't think she's very aware at all.
No.
I think she just says the words, and we accept all of her words, whether they are Dutch or English. We accept them and understand. So if she says slapen, then I say, yes, you want to go to sleep. But I indicate that I understand her.
Maybe
I don't think
we,
she knows.
Yeah, maybe we can add something else here, because as far as I understand, you understand Dutch and English. And also, Marlies, you understand English, which is the language that your grandchildren speak with their parents, or no, not always, but they are exposed to it. Yes, and so it is maybe an advantage for grandparents to know also the other language, in order not to feel this kind of barrier already in between the languages that the child knows so far.
But I do want to point out one thing, is that the love of a grandparent to the grandchild transcends any language. If you don't share a language with your child, I don't want anyone to kind of feel that if they do not happen to speak the language the child is learning, you can still have a relationship. I've seen that in my own extended family. So I don't want anyone to feel like I have to be able to speak the language that my grandchild speaks. We should be there and help and do what we can, but in those occasions when it doesn't happen, the relationship is still there, and it can be very good.
No, it's not what I meant. I meant more that it can help not to have this kind of situation where you don't understand what your grandchild is saying. So you can actually help the child also to find the word faster, easier in the target language. How is it with you, Marlies? Oh, sorry. Yes.
It's I remember I'm talking usually about the oldest one, because she's very interested. The 6-year-old one, he also speaks German, but he, how can I say it? He's not as much interested in the language as she is. And she very often asks me to tell her, to explain her something. And then if she doesn't understand a word in German, I say, okay, I can say it in English. Vice versa, she tells stories, or she tells me something about school or her friends or whatever. And when she doesn't know a word in German, she tries to explain it in German. And in the end, she said, okay, I can say it only in English. And then I say it in German. But I don't have the impression that she has any difficulty. She doesn't have this large vocabulary. She has a good vocabulary, but she tries to express everything in German when she speaks with me or with my husband. And I find that very interesting, because she knows that I speak English. She hears me speaking with her mother, for example. All the same, she doesn't try to switch from German to English, because it's easier, naturally much easier for her. And I find that very, very fascinating. It gives me a big hope, and I'm sure that she'll continue to speak German. And she already said that maybe she wants to go to a German university or a German school or something like that. So I don't think that she'll do that, but the language
She might.
she
Never
likes.
know.
Yes.
First
The
of all,
world is a small place these days.
that's
Yes.
true. That's very true. And at school, it's an English school. It really is the American school in Switzerland. So English is the teaching language, the language they speak at school. But they also teach the children Portuguese, and she's very good at Portuguese because she loves languages. The smaller son, the 6-year-old son, he does it because he has to, but he's
Yes.
not very interested in the language, as they tell me. But
Yes.
German, he accepts the German language,
Yes.
and he speaks German.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's something that he knows. He speaks that with his father. He speaks that with his grandmother. So yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
If I may, I think Uta really brings up an important point that differentiates a group of grandparents like yourself who actually speak both or more languages, where somebody like my mother, she does speak English. I mean, she can communicate, but it just doesn't feel right
Natural.
for her.
Yes.
Yeah, for her to use English with me or any member in the house. She speaks Japanese, and it's just normal for her to do that with the kids. Now that said,
Yes.
our kids have been grown up, raised in different languages, and it's natural for them to switch around. Whereas my little brother, he also grew up speaking Japanese, but he married a Quebecer girl here in Quebec, and so there's not as much Japanese in the house, and so his children didn't really grow up speaking a lot of Japanese, and now we see sort of there's that barrier that builds up between the grandparents and the kids because the grandparents don't speak the grandchildren's language. So that's where I see a lot of immigrant families from Asia go through this situation.
Especially as the children get older, because when they're very
Indeed.
small, if you are sitting on the floor playing with them and you're talking about what you're playing with, the context helps everyone understand. But as they get older, of course, you lose that text to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like also to mention one situation that we have in the family. We have Swiss German and German as family languages with extended family. But my father-in-law, he doesn't like to speak High German, so Hochdeutsch. So from the beginning, he would speak only Swiss German with my children who did understand everything, or if they don't understand, they make him understand how far they can understand him. But there was always a bilingual conversation between them. So my children would talk to him in German. He understands German and he speaks it also, but he doesn't feel as confident as it would be just to have this conversation regularly with my children, or even with me, right? So he speaks to me in Swiss German and I speak back in German so that my children don't feel excluded, or that I am somehow helping them not to feel the odd one out in a setting that is quite Swiss German, although now they could also speak Swiss German, but maybe not hold a whole conversation. So I think this is also something that I wanted to find out when I said this before, when maybe one of the parents or the grandparents cannot, for whatever reason, speak that language with the child, that there are other opportunities, but it's helpful if then the grandparent has a mean or a way to understand what the grandchild is doing in order to have this kind of communication. Because otherwise, if my father-in-law wouldn't be able to understand Hochdeutsch, there wouldn't be a conversation, there wouldn't be a relationship. So I think there are other cases that are very similar and where you can always find a way to solve the problem. But we were talking about also maybe with the older children, with Marlies, with your oldest grandchildren. And I have a question and I will put it on in a moment, and I put you in the center because it's for you. How do you, no, not this one, I'm sorry. I can't find the question anymore. It was about
is it the language strategy?
The strategy, yes.
Okay,
oh, I find it now again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you work out a language strategy, or did you work out a language strategy with your children when it comes to, or are you working like independent to each other? Let me specify. Especially when the children start going to school, for example, and the school language is, let's say, English, and you speaking German, and you know that the children are there maybe for a few days, that they say, okay, let them maybe watch a video in English, and then you do the transition into German. Or is there anything that you work out with your children, or are you independent from each other? Because for me, for myself, it was also a problem, because I had a certain kind of image of what I wanted to do, and we did it, my husband and I, but we did not find any collaboration from our extended family, so we were a bit lonely in this, if I may say. So, oh, we lost.
I think we still are completely independent, but that's no problem, because, as I said, we grew up our own son bilingually, so it was the most natural thing for us to speak. The only thing, but that was, we told our son and his wife, naturally, but that was something between me and my husband, that he decided that he would not speak Italian with the children, because, as I explained before, there were too few opportunities to speak Italian with them. So he said, okay, I'll also speak German with them. So there are more than one, because at home they have only one person, our son, who speaks German with them. So there are more persons. And my sister, who speaks different languages, when we visited her and our children were here, and our grandchildren, she started speaking English with them. And I said, okay, they speak English, but we want them to understand and to speak German. So please switch to German. We all know that you speak English. You don't have to prove it. And it's a totally natural thing.
Yes, yes. But you actually pointed out one very important aspect, because you are following this this direction that you also followed with Martino when he was younger. This that you speak your language, your husband the other one. Now with your grandchildren, you decided to speak German. But whenever someone else joins, you also defend this plan, so to say, plan.
Yes.
Right. So if you know the other person that is sitting at the table is switching to English, but actually it speaks also German, and it would be really important that my grandchildren know that this person also speaks German, and gets maybe fed the vocabulary and everything, the input in German in this particular moment, because they are rare. Then it's you're actually advocate for your grandchildren, and I find it fascinating. It's amazing. I thank you.
I think that's only normal. Because nobody has to prove that he or she speaks different languages. I speak German, Italian, French, English. I'm not perfect in English, and in French still less. I speak the languages, and I've tried to learn Arabic for years. We were 6 old people, and it was very interesting. It was just, we knew that we would never learn the language really well, but it was just to keep our brains occupied. And language is one of my favorite things. I love the language, and I love, first of all, my own mother language. And our son knows it, and he has always oh my God, si è lamentato.
Complained.
He complained. Yes, he complained about me because I'm very severe. With them, I was very severe. With our grandchildren, I'm not at all severe. I do that, and I think it's only normal. It's natural. If they say something to me that is a bit. My granddaughter said, "Ich habe die Hose angezogen." Ute will understand.
Yes.
And then I repeat it correctly without. I don't correct her. I just repeat it. Yes, you put on your trousers, and so I think that's a natural way, and it works very well. But I have a lifelong experience.
Yes. Yeah, and you have the
I'm not a professional. I'm not, but I have my experience, and I use it.
Yes, but
you
I
don't
think,
have to be a professional to teach language.
No.
Oh, and you're not teaching. You are transmitting, and the child is acquiring. So that's not a teaching process. I wanted to add about that. When others when others think that they are doing the right thing by changing the language they speak. Like I have to remind when we all go back to Finland. It's complicated. We're Finland Swedes, so that's why we're speaking Swedish. And all my family, they all speak back in Finland. They also speak English. I have to always remind that please do keep speaking Swedish, even if he would be able to speak English better than you would probably be able to have a bigger kind of a longer discussion. But I always have to, I ask, please do stick to Swedish. And I noticed when we moved from Finland to the UK, because our children's, my daughters spoke Punjabi with their dad, so they were fluently speaking Punjabi. When we came to the UK, everybody automatically, all who were of Indian origin or who could speak Punjabi, they always switched to English with them constantly, every single one, because they couldn't believe that small children would speak Punjabi, because that is still not the norm here. So whose language it was, I had to correct them. Please speak Punjabi to them.
Even they speak it.
Yes, because they speak it. And my younger daughter, she was only 6 when we moved, and she didn't know English at that point. And they tried to speak English kind of slower and slower, and said, no, please switch to Punjabi. She can speak that. And they were kind of, what? That's small. So we do have to find ourselves the defenders of the policies that we've chosen.
Yes.
That is something my daughter-in-law, Mariam, has written about, because she also has difficulties. Her parents, who speak English very, very well, it's nearly their second mother language, they speak more or spoke more English with the children than Urdu. And she had to insist, at least she told me, she had to insist and she wrote something about that, and she asked herself, why are we not happy or proud of our mother language? Urdu is not a language that is spoken in the whole world like English, but it is our language, and we're proud of it. And I'm perfectly of the same opinion. Each language is a language. And when I come to think of it, my husband, who comes from Sicily, he grew up bilingually too, because he grew up with Italian and with a Sicilian dialect that is very different from Italian. So he really grew up bilingually without even noticing it.
Yes, and I think, these are also political reasons or social reasons why one language is considered more prestigious than the other. And this is actually what we also experience in our own family, that there are some kind of power struggles, not between me and my husband, fortunately not, we're on the same page, but when you speak with cousins or even sisters or brothers or so, then you find that you have to somehow defend this right to pass on the languages that you chose and that are important for your children or your grandchildren in your case. So I don't know, Tetsu, do we have questions from the audio, or did you have a question or something that you wanted to add?
No, I didn't have any question, but I was just going to say, time is sort of winding down. It's always like this. We have such interesting discussions. We would like to go on forever, but unfortunately, time is up, and I don't see any more questions in the chat boxes. So, and the reason why I bring this up also at this moment in time, other than the fact that it is already top of the hour, is that it's a good transition to our next guest, who is going to be talking about something that really resonates well with what we've been discussing here, including pride in the languages, social reasons, and whatnot. So, how about I put this on the screen and then hang on, where am I? Here we go. No, here we go.
This one, yes.
Yes.
Yes, because on Tuesday, the 21st of September, we have the honor to have Nair Ibrahim as our guest, and she is Associate Professor of English Subject Pedagogy at Nord University in Norway. And she will be talking about the importance of negotiating identity in multilingual contexts and focus on the tripartite framework of identity, of person, place, and experience. So that will be a very important topic, I think, for everyone. So please join us on Tuesday, the 21st of September at 1 p.m. New York, 6 p.m. London, and 7 p.m. Paris.
Big topic. It's going to be a very difficult one to navigate, but definitely super interesting. I mean, personally, I get this question all the time. So hopefully we'll have lots of people joining in and get another discussion going. But for today, definitely we want to thank our guests, Frances and Marlies. It has been super interesting and enriching.
It's a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much for joining us and for sharing your experience that is multi-generational, we can say, in both ways, as we have also the grandparent who is involved. And thank you very much for taking the time to be with us and sharing this. And maybe we see each other again somehow, somewhere. We wish everyone a nice evening, night, wherever we are. En tot de volgende keer. Alla prossima. Bis zum nächsten Mal.
Nähdään taas 2 viikon kuluttua. Hei!
There you go. See you in
Goodbye.
2 weeks. Sayonara. Thank you.
Bye.